Okay, so we are going to start our new unit. This will be our last big unit of the year, really. So we're going to start covering basically just all the processes that go into what happens after a person dies that can help us calculate time of death, how that person died, all really important information that you really can't solve a case without. Sorry, my eyes. Okay. So death is considered the cessation of life, so basically the end of life. It is not a split-second event, but rather a culmination of processes that stop functioning. Immediately, the heart stops, blood flow stops, oxygen transport stops, and then breathing stops. So that's what we look at and see in a person and see, or that's what when we see those things, we say that someone has died. 3 to 7 minutes after those things have stopped, the brain will cease function within minutes once blood flow stops and begins to die. This is irreversible most of the time. So if you've heard of people suffering from brain death, it's because those other things stopped, heart stopped, blood stopped, oxygen stopped. So then their brain starts to die a few minutes after. If too much of that brain cells die, there really isn't a way to bring that person back. So after 7 to 10 minutes, cells begin to die, so just other cells known as autolysis, and organs begin to break down. There is a tipping point where life cannot be restarted. So about 7 to 10 minutes is where we see that switch, where if a person is heart stopped, blood stopped, oxygen has stopped, breathing has stopped. About 10 minutes after, generally, they cannot be brought back from that. If there is suspicion surrounding the death, a pathologist will perform an autopsy. So autopsies can tell us the manner of death, the means by which death occurred, the cause of death, so the reason death occurred, the mechanism of death, which just means the specific part of the body that failed that caused death, and the time of death. So these are things we could all pull from the autopsy, be an important process in investigation. So we're going to break down those parts. So manner, cause, mechanism, and time. So manner of death. The manner of death is grouped into 5 categories. Yawning. Natural, accidental, suicidal, homicidal, and undetermined. So we're going to break down each of those 5 categories with an example. And then cause of death. The cause of death is the reason a person died. Cause of death for natural means heart attack, stroke, terminal illness. So those would be a natural cause. Cause of death, accidental. So accidental means accidental. It's accidental. It was unintentional. This may happen due to manslaughter cases. Remember, so someone was hit by a car, or someone died while performing some kind of act. They were, a trick. Examples may include vehicular manslaughter, falling off of a cliff, rolling an ATV over, falling from a ladder, hanging Christmas lights, all those weird kinds of deaths would be accidental. Suicide would mean deaths are classified as suicide when someone deliberately takes their own life. Drug overdose, hangings, gunshots, wounds, and cutting. For homicide, as deaths are considered homicide when there is a premeditated act carried out that had intent to kill someone. So stabbings, gunshots, feeding to the fishes. Cause of death, undetermined. So deaths may be ruled undetermined when an autopsy can't determine if the death was suicide, homicide, or accidental. Okay, what are you doing? Why? So if you can't narrow it down on your autopsy, then you're going to be undetermined. So an example of this may include an infant death that may have been attributed to SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, a natural cause, but also showed evidence of unsafe sleeping practices. So you could call that negligence, accidental. In this case, the medical examiner may rule the death as undetermined. Now, mechanism of death is the specific body part that failed. So the mechanism of death describes the specific bodily failure that results in the cessation of life. So examples, strangulation cuts off the air supply. So the resulting is asphyxiation. So what actually happened was loss of oxygen to your brain. That's what actually is failing, is loss of oxygen. Stabbings and shooting cause extreme blood loss. So yes, stabbing is what happened. That's the cause. But what mechanism in your body? Blood loss, resulting in exsanguination, what that is called, from blood loss. Natural causes like pneumonia can cause lack of oxygen due to the lungs' inability to transport gases through the fluid buildup. So, lack of oxygen again. Okay, so let's practice an example. A man was involved in a fight at a club and returns with a gun to finish the fight. He shoots another patron in the back, severing his aorta. That's his here. No, it's not. It's your heart. Yeah, that's the valve in your heart. So the man who was shot begins to bleed out quickly and dies within minutes. What was the manner of death, cause of death, and mechanism of death? So the manner of death is homicide. Okay, so there was an intent to harm or kill before the action took place. So remember, manner goes back to these choices: natural, accidental, suicidal, homicidal, undetermined. So that's manner. So in this case, it'd be homicidal. The cause of death is a gunshot wound. So this is what happened to him. He had a gunshot wound. This is the injury that produces the physiological disruption in the body. So what was happened? He was shot. Okay, so cause of death, he was shot. So mechanism of death, how did he actually die? What happened in his body that his body stopped working? Was that blood loss. So lack of blood causes heart to stop beating. Okay, so that's kind of mostly it. A couple other things, the last slide. Yeah, a couple other examples. So mechanism of death examples. So if someone has been shot, they may die from loss of blood. That was the example we just had. If someone has a heart attack, they may die from pulmonary arrest or their heart stopping. So their heart attack is a natural cause. So why do they die? Their heart stopped. That's what a heart attack is. If someone is strangled, they may die from lack of oxygen. So again, like a lot of those kind of repeats, but just when you're thinking of the mechanism of death, you got to think about like what actually went wrong in their body that caused the body to stop working. And that's it for today. So quick and easy.